Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for July 2nd, 2024. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are, as usual, streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can ask questions and make comments there as well, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's Weekly Tittle, which was called Turn Over a New Leaf or Take a Fresh Look at an Old One. The assignment was to work on a new habit that you'd like to cultivate or an old habit that you'd like to modify or eliminate. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook who experimented with habits this week. Please let us know in the comments. Longtime friend of the webcast, Kara, shared her tittle report in a comment on last week's show notes. Kara writes, "My new habit is not leaving the house for my next adventure without doing what I can to A, do any dishes left from the last meal, and B, straighten up my command center and any crafts left out. This is already making a big difference in how the house looks and in how I feel when I come back from said adventure."
That sounds like a great habit, Cara. That's so great. You're addressing the areas of home that are being actively used and you're doing regular maintenance routines on them. And I'm guessing that it doesn't take too long to do it since you're maintaining these areas consistently. That means you're clearing up what got scattered since the last time you cleared up. So it's always just an incremental adjustment. And that's not hard to do at all. So coming home from fun and finding your house in reasonable shape is always good for your mood. So no need for your house to spoil your fun when you come home. And so we're going to all cheer for Cara, who did a great job and has developed a habit that's really supporting her at home. That's wonderful. That's a great Till report. Thank you.
Rowan reports working on being more ruthless.
Ooh.
Have stuff to deliver to church and fabric recycling store. I'm starting my first no-buy month. And
Oh, isn't that interesting?
she goes on to say, shopping is a habit I need to stop. I really don't need anything. Diane says, we have to clean the bunker to hide from fireworks since our dog gets super freaked out. Yeah, we're going to be we're going to have to hunker down here as well because our boy freaks out about
He doesn't like,
fireworks.
he
Yeah.
doesn't like yeah.
Paula says, I ignored the tittle as usual, went to the Pride Parade and came home with a bunch of swag. Some of it will make its way to the kiddos and the family, but not all of it.
Yeah. Okay. So you
Got to
probably
make a plan for the rest of it. Is it?
and you probably were grabbing swag enthusiastically, and so you can probably come back, after a couple of days have gone by and look at the collection a little bit more um, reasonably and see if some of it maybe needs to like not stay or be recycled right away or whatever. Like there may not be, it may not all need to stay or be had a home made for it. You can decide that some of it was an error in judgment in the enthusiasm of the moment. You can donate it right away, or if it's paperwork or whatever, you can send it. You can recycle it. So just to consider that you can just because it came home and your enthusiasm doesn't mean you can't reevaluate it in the cold light of day and see if you can't
Yes.
decide that some of it doesn't actually have to live with you after all.
Naomi says in Canada here, our fireworks were last night. So a late happy Canada Day to all of our friends and audience members north of the border.
Oh, I didn't know it was so close, that they were so close together. That's
Yeah, July
cool.
1st.
Happy Canada Day.
Connie says, speaking of shopping, we went to get replacement for a fan and left without one. We'll see if we can manage without.
You mean you went shopping for a fan and then you didn't buy one and you went home without it?
That's what it
That's
sounds
funny.
like. Yeah, it sounds
Well,
like.
no, that's one way to keep the clutter out of the house. Don't actually buy one. Although 'tis the season for a fan, so maybe you want to rethink that shopping trip.
M says, my needs to be a workable closet and clothes changing area. First step was to pick up all clothes and put them away. That part is done. As I did this, I
Mm,
realized that the problem is that I need a more convenient area to change clothes, trying to map out how to do it.
that's interesting. So you feel like that the space where you change clothes doesn't work well, and you're trying to decide what to do about that. Okay, cool. And I love that your first step was to pick up and put away all the clothes. And that should have pointed out to you the areas where things are too crowded, or it's too hard to put things away, or it's too hard to see what you have after you've put them all away. If the drawers are super tight and super full, time to, thin it out and make it work better. And, good. Come back and tell us what you decide about your dressing area. I'll be curious to see how the next steps go. So come back and tell us about it.
Suze says, upon reflecting how to get started, I decided to do something early in my day to get going. A walk with my dog or a virtual Zumba class gets me dressed and moving and cuts back procrastinating.
That's interesting. So the motion and the activity is what allows you to get going and get focused. That's cool. Good to know. Good to know that about yourself and how and what works. And so excellent.
There were a lot of interesting responses to the survey in which people said, well, particularly morning people said, I'm a morning person, but I sometimes I stay up too late, or I sleep in because this, that, or the other. And then it sounds like, then it goes all to pieces because I didn't get a good start, you
And
know?
they're not making use of their effective time.
Two thoughts about that. One is good for recognizing that how you start your day off is very important, especially for a morning person. And somebody who really thrives in the afternoon and evening can lie around watching TV or surfing the web all morning and maybe not feel inclined to beat up on themselves about it. But we morning people, if we don't get a good start, it can feel like we've torpedoed ourselves, you know?
Well, and because by definition, your energy is going to wane later in the day, right? You're not going to have your best, most focused energy in the afternoon. And so if you feel like you get derailed, then you're not at your best to recover either.
Yeah. And you have to be willing, like there are going to be days when no matter how much of a morning person you are, the day does not get off on the right foot.
Right.
And you have to be gentle with yourself then and say, okay, it's 11 o'clock. My day is supposed to be half done by now, but it's not. And so I'm going to pull myself together and start from right here. No use crying over spilt milk, right?
Right. And the alternative for me as a night person is I do my lounging around during the day, and procrastination looks like how long does it take me to get started in the afternoon. So
Right.
if I'm doing well, I'm getting started at noon or 1 or 2. And if I'm not doing well, I'm starting at 3 or 4 or 5. Um, I'll still, a Saturday, I didn't want to get started. And so I was trying to work on something for the move. And I came into my office, but I didn't come until 4. And that was after yelling at myself. But then I worked from 4 until midnight. So I managed to get 8 hours worth of stuff done. And um, it was necessary work for the project of moving. So I got my time slot in. I just ate up my evening with work instead of, if I had started earlier in the day, I could have had a little bit more, hanging around at
Some
night and
TV
entertaining
time
myself.
or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I suffered from my own procrastination, but I did it.
Um, some suggestions from Naomi for M, talking about a place to change clothes, or anyone else who's struggling with that. Naomi says, convenience to change clothes. Have hooks or over-the-door hanger to hang up clothes to reuse. Have a
Hmm.
laundry basket right there to immediately dump the things to wash. Have a chair to sit down to do socks and shoes.
Hmm. Yeah, we all it's easier to put on your socks and shoes if you sat down someplace to do it. So having a chair somewhere, or a bench, whatever, a stool, anywhere that you can park for a second and quickly jerk on shoes and socks is going to help you get ready in the morning for sure. I don't think everybody plans for that. Sometimes people sit on the bed, maybe, but I find being on the because my bed is tall. I find sitting on the bed to be awkward and not useful. I actually have a bench.
Julie says, I finally made room for my car in the garage.
Oh, that's excellent. Perfect timing for the summer. So now your car is not going to be out in the sun baking on the same level. The car will be warm, but it won't be scorching, which is great. That's wonderful.
Julie goes on to say, now I need a new routine for keys, purse, etc. New entry is through the laundry room, which is currently a
Ah,
depressing landing zone for clutter. Please advise.
so now your clearing of the garage has moved into the laundry room. And, if you think about it, the laundry room is almost always the room on the way out of the house, right? It's always close to the garage, often close to the garage. And so it's like the garage and the washer and the dryer are the first horizontal surface that you see when you come in the house. And so it's often a place where people dump stuff on the way in. Like, no, 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 that you can't think of the washer and the dryer as a table. They're not a table. And so revamping that laundry room is probably your next project, it sounds like. Clearing it up and deciding, okay, I'm going to come in and I need to put these certain things away. And I want to do them in the laundry room because that's right inside when I come in the house. And therefore, I have to plan that landing strip. I have to create a place for the keys to go. I have to create a place for my purse to sit, et cetera, et cetera. Although, I'm not sure about the whole purse by the door thing. Um,
Right, right.
that might make me a little nervous. So maybe that landing zone needs to be come through the kitchen. I mean, come through the laundry room into the next room, and then the landing zone arrives where you're going to park keys and purse and whatever. Um, but you can look at it yourself and see what you think. If there's a place to hide it so that it's not visible from the door. Um, if there's any kind of glass there, usually a door into the garage or a door on the way out to the backyard from the laundry room is often got a piece of glass in it. And so just keeping that in mind, and whatever you do with them, however you land them, make sure they're not easily visible from outside of the house.
If you need to ease yourself out of the laundry room being the landing zone, maybe a first step is to containerize, put a container of reasonable size on the shelf above the washer or wherever the convenient spot is that can capture stuff that comes home that you're not ready to deal with the minute you come in the door.
Mm,
It can go into that bin, or things that your family brings home that if they don't have a designated place, you can at least corral it into one spot.
right. And the whole kids coming home with backpack thing you got to
Oh,
plan for that.
right.
The kids
That's
coming through the house, like that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? But if there's not little kids involved, then it's just a matter of what you're bringing in, letting go of on the way into the house, and why. Um, Circling back to grab those things, even if you drop them because you have to run in and change clothes, or you're going to run in and go to the bathroom or whatever, but making it part of your routine to come back and pick up those things. We all come into the house and like, oh, we've been concentrating on driving, we've been running errands, whatever. We've had a long day. We come home, and by definition, we're sort of tired. And so, getting past dropping everything and going about settling into the house, changing clothes, resting for a minute, getting a drink, whatever you're going to do. And then circling back to pick up those things and going, okay, now I've given myself a pause. I've gotten myself settled into the house. And now I'm going to come and pick those things up and redistribute them. And I will tell you that I have a client who she routinely takes bags out of the house with stuff to support what she's doing outside the house. And then she comes back with those bags and she sits them down when she comes in the door. And then by the time I show up, there's like 8 bags sitting there from all of the visits and, classes she's taught and things that she's gone to go do and shopping trips and whatever. It's all sitting there by the door as a big pile of bags. And I end up unpacking all those bags as part of my work. And this time I found an egg because she had gone to an event with snacks and food. And I guess it was something she was there all day. And so she came with her own meals, her own lunch, and went. And then the bag came and parked. And I don't know how long the egg had been there. It was a hard-boiled egg, thank God. But I don't know how long it had been there. And I reached in and pulled it out and went, yeah, I'm guessing this isn't good anymore. And we threw that away and had a good laugh about it. But that's the kind of stuff that when you go out of the house and you come back with a bag that you were working with all day, there's no telling what's in there. And it really needs to be cleared before there's something dead in there. So, and dead that it's going to attract bugs, right? Like part of it was that there was food detritus in there. And so that's the definition of, you're creating a salad bar for the bugs to find. So need to circle back and pick that stuff up is what I'm saying. And do the unpacking.
Okay, we should move on to our main topic because we have so much prepared. We're returning to the topic we talked about last week. Living the lives we dream of starts with making the most of every day. But cluttered spaces and unproductive habits can waste valuable time, sap our strength and stamina, and keep us from making each day count toward our long-term goals. We're going to continue our discussion today about ways to streamline our homes and lives with healthy, effective habits and routines.
Welcome back to round 2 on this topic. We're going back to our survey results again because we had so many great commentaries from you guys in our survey. So I'm going to refresh you that we asked our audience, what are the trouble spots in your daily routine or your family's routines? In other words, where do you find your habits and routines breaking down on a regular basis? So we got some more here.
Okay, let me read responses for you.
Okay.
Intignia says, chronic illness messes with my good intentions. I never know how long feeling good will last, as there are many instances when my strength and stamina are gone poof, just like that with no apparent cause. Basically, I have to live my life moment to moment, but I still manage to get a little done most days. And Evelyn says, I suffer from depression and often have no energy to do what I had planned. It can happen at any time. And Rowan said, my health is not great, so I overestimate what I can get done. I have to be careful buying fresh produce.
So I grouped all those together because the theme of these 3 comments is limited and unpredictable physical resources, stamina that vanishes suddenly, depression that pops up anytime, overestimating physical capacity to work. I grouped these together because the solution is similar for each of them. Pick much smaller project increments to move forward. Find something that you can work on for 15 minutes and then check in with yourself. Are you still feeling okay? If you are, then you can commit to another 15 minutes and then stop again and check in and then take a break for 30 minutes. I mean, expect to only work 30 minutes of any hour. And if you can do that twice in a day, you will have worked on something for an hour that day. Even if you're feeling depressed, sometimes you can talk yourself into 15 minutes of something and you'll feel better about yourself and about the day if you can make that happen. If physical stamina is your issue, then working for 2 15-minute sessions in an hour, and then again the next hour gets you an hour of project work. You might be able to stop and rest over the midday and then try again in the afternoon. By the end of the day, you'll have worked for 2 hours in 15-minute increments. My point is that it doesn't matter if you have to do it in 15-minute slots with breaks in between over the day. You can still get 2 hours in, same as somebody who sits down to do it all in one go. The end result's the same. Slow and steady wins the race. And if you can combine that with asking for help at the end to handle what you process, like throwing out the trash or recycling or putting away what you want to keep, then you can get to a completed stopping point, and that will be very, very satisfying.
Kathy says, if I can't get my chores and errands done before 10 a.m. when I go to work in my home office, then they don't get done. I am too tired at end of work day to do much cleaning or decluttering. So if I oversleep or spend too long in my devotional time, I have to skip the chores to get to work on time.
Getting into work on time is very important. They really appreciate that when you get there on time. So I would aim to get anything done before work starts. So if you oversleep, then pick one thing on the chore list to get done before work based on how much time you have. Also, I think your window for cleaning and decluttering is too small during the work week. Since you're tired at the end of the workday, um, and you may be one of those morning people, right? You get it done during the morning or not at all. And if you work a full day, everybody's tired at the end of a full day of work. It's not like you have a bunch of leftover stamina to come home and start a project. So adding, the idea of adding decluttering time isn't really reasonable during the work week. So I think that means you have to move some of that cleaning and decluttering work to the weekend. Sorry, it's the plight of the working stiff. Personal stuff that you have to do on the weekends, such a bummer. But I think expecting yourself to do stuff before work all day, and do stuff after work isn't reasonable. Nobody would have a whole lot of stamina to do that every day of the week. That's not reasonable. So do something in the morning while you have the capacity, and adjust that something based on, how early you start your day and how much time you have before you have to get to work. And then I think you have to add into your other free time, so that, because nobody wants to work on clutter, and you certainly don't want to work on it when you're overtired and you don't have good resources to work on it. And so moving it to one of your personal days when you're not required to be at work means that you can come at it fresh and with a full energy. And that gives you the best possible capacity to work on it in the shortest amount of time. It'll mean that you can make decisions better. It'll mean that you are being able to focus on it without falling asleep, without feeling low energy. And so it seems like a hassle to give up some of your free time on the weekend, but it's probably your most effective time to be able to get it done quickly and efficiently, so that you're not wasting a lot of time because you feel sluggish, or you're overtired, or you already used up all your strength for the day. And so, sorry, those who work have to work this stuff in somewhere else. And at the end of the day is always the hardest time to do it, because you've already spent all of your resources for the day. So
You teach what you most need to learn,
yeah.
you know? And I was thinking it's probably appropriate that we're doing a show on productivity and good habits and productive routines and all of that, because I could use some help there. And I think those who tend more to be effective in the morning, and I
Mm.
know, that was actually about a third of our audience identify as
Yeah.
morning people. Um, you have to be very conscientious about bedtime, and about how you're using your time and energy in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
If you've accepted about yourself that you aren't particularly productive in the evening, you're tired, you're brain dead, you're foggy, whatever, then pay attention to how late you're staying up, and set yourself a bedtime. I actually, from time to time, keep an evening alarm that goes off at 10:30 to say, okay, you're supposed to be in bed no later than an hour from now. And
Right.
and sometimes I pay attention to it and sometimes I don't. But I think you have to recognize your limitations and take some positive steps to honor them, to work within your capacities. Get to bed early.
And it worked when you were a little kid, right? Like the reason that your mother fought you and made you go to bed early was because then you function better the next day. And we all function better on a sufficient amount of sleep. And so, yeah, I totally get it. And the more stressed out I am, the less sleep I get, which makes everything worse. So I do know that from experience. You have to acknowledge that all things are better with sleep. Even if you don't know the solution to a problem, even if you're, a emotional wreck, all things are better with sleep. Your body is designed to require a third of your day, your 24-hour day, to be asleep. And so whatever's going on with you, regardless of whether it's physical or emotional or whatever, all things are better with sleep. And so acknowledging that and being in charge of your own, bedtime, like you're not a little kid anymore, and your mom is not going to stand there and yell at you about going to bed and force you to go to bed. You don't have that hall monitor anymore. You don't have that corraler anymore. So you have to be your own mother around this and talk yourself into going to bed.
Maybe we start
Totally.
maybe we start some sort of service where you pay a small fee and someone's mother calls you and says, "Honey,
Go
why
to
are you
bed.
still up? You should go to bed. It's 10:30."
Oh my gosh, I
Okay, we
miss
should
my
probably
mother.
I miss my mother a lot too. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She totally would, Gayle, why are you still up? She absolutely said that to me on the regular. Oh, that's funny.
Okay, let's see. There we are. Debbie's next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Debbie said, "I have good intentions, but procrastinate doing the more difficult things. For example, I'm a month late on sending a high school graduation card. Need to find the right words of how to sign it. LOL. I keep the house picked up, dishes done, bed made, but resisting deeper into clutter."
LOL about the graduation card. You're writing to a high school kid, right? Superb elegance in writing will be lost on them, most likely, unless they're going for an English major in college. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's more important to just get it to them. And about difficult decluttering projects in general, what I said before about working in increments works on these too. If something feels too difficult, a project, then just focus on the next step and don't worry about getting the whole project done. You just need to attempt one step, working on one part of the project. And like I said earlier, I went into my office this weekend because I need to go through all of the contents of the office. But what I wanted to focus on this weekend was the bead magazines that I have stored there. I have magazine holders with a bunch of bead magazines in it, and I'm not really using them as reference anymore. So it's time to donate those magazines, and I needed to go through that collection of magazines for my project on Saturday. It was 1 2 hour step that I could take. It did not get the whole office done. I still have to do the whole office, but it was 1 2 hour step I could take. And I didn't want to spend the whole day in my office working. And so I just concentrated on that magazine collection and getting it ready to go out. And I can see the difference in my office. There's a blank space where all those magazines used to be. The magazines are packaged in containers that I can take to my BD associates, my BD friends, for them to put their hands on the magazines. And so there was a bunch of paper in between that was recyclable, and I got that out. And so it was a good 2 hour focused chunk to make one piece of the office different and ready to move. And I couldn't stay in here and do all the things that I need to do in this office. I need to filter the office supplies. I needed to go through my mother's photos. There's things in here that I need to handle. And there's no way I could do it all in one sitting. So I did the one step that I could do, and that made me, that moved my project along, and I'm grateful, and I'll be back in here another time to do more. But that was my first step. And it all has to get done. I've said this a million times. It all has to get done. It doesn't matter what your first step is. Go find a first step and do that part of the difficult project, and don't worry about doing it all. Because if what's hanging you up is there's a whole lot to do and it's going on for forever, then yeah, you're not going to get it done one sitting anyway. So you might as well just pick one little piece and do one little piece. The end.
One other comment on Debbie's comment. She said, "Need to find the right words of how to sign it. LOL." And I think that I may be, reading into that a little bit, but I think as she wrote it down, she realized how funny it is. I have to find just the right thing to say in this high school graduation card. And
Yeah.
I think that's a testament to the value of your written list, or your voice memo list, whatever method of recording works for you.
Yeah.
Note these things down. What are the obstacles I'm trying to deal with? What are the
projects?
what are the projects that are tripping me up? What are the tasks that I find overwhelming or unpleasant or whatever, writing them down gives you a certain power over them. You can realize,
Hmm.
you know what, that that's probably not nearly as hard as I've been making it by avoiding it for the last month,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And it can you can also you can write it down, and you can write down how much time you think it's going to take. How long is it going to take to write that just right thing in the birthday card?
Right.
I mean, even if you want to write something that they'll remember for the rest of their lives, you can probably do that in what, half
An
an hour?
hour. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
yeah.
there's only so much room in a graduation card, right? So,
Right. Yeah. You can't say all inspirational things that you can think of because it won't all fit on the card, right?
yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Peggy says her trouble spot is keeping track of the notes I jot on random pieces of paper, despite the fact that I have a clipboard and paper for this purpose.
I have a surprising number of clients with this issue, actually. The trick is noticing where you're grabbing a piece of paper to write things down. If your clipboard isn't near you when you impulsively reach to write something, then the clipboard isn't really helping then. Having a designated place to capture notes, whether it's a clipboard or a notebook or a scratch pad, is a great idea. And it has to live where you actually make notes the most often. That, and you have to commit to consciously change your habit on this one. When you reach for something to write on, you have to remind yourself that you need to be grabbing your designated notebook instead. Or if you don't remember in the in the moment as you're grabbing things, then you want to commit that you will take that note and go paste it into the notebook right away. We've talked about habit formation a lot here, and your habit to grab whatever loose paper to write on is what you're trying to address by using a notebook. And you will have to clean up behind yourself and gather those loose papers into the notebook every day until you manage to remember to look for and grab the notebook before you start jotting instead of after. So, this is one of those processes that lots of people have problems with. And it's super easy to think, oh gosh, I need to write that down. And you just reach for a paper wherever you are and you start writing. And then it's like, okay, now what do I do with that piece of paper? And either you interrupt yourself before and go grab the notebook and take the note, or you take the note that you've written and make yourself go paste it into the notebook because that's the only way to keep up with it. And you can do digital versions of this. I see a bullet journal is good for that. Like there's all kinds of OneNote, there's note taking apps. So you can do it on your laptop, you can do it on your phone. There's a digital version, you can do a paper version. But ultimately, the habit you're trying to change is I grab whatever envelope or bill or magazine or notepad or scrap of paper I tear off of something and write on it. And then it's like, okay, now what do I do with it? You have created chaos immediately. And so changing that habit to, I need a piece of paper. Oh, I need to go get my notebook and write in that is the first habit change. And it can be supported by if you write it on a scrap, then the secondary habit change can be to take that scrap and go put it in the notebook afterwards.
or
Hopefully,
or
cutting and
the or
pasting a
there,
lot.
or the maybe you have a little, maybe you have maybe there's a tray that sits where you spend most of your time, and that's where all the notes go until you sit down for your compiling all my notes task.
Right. And put it all in something.
The main,
Exactly.
I think the main point is, if you have a system, examine it and figure out why. Do you keep your clipboard where the notes are supposed to go, too far away? Is it hard to use? Is it not the right tool? Would you prefer digital to paper?
Hmm.
Maybe that's the problem. If you invented a paper solution and you're really much better at managing things digitally, then face that
Yeah.
and
Shift
design
gears. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
shift gears and design a new system.
Hmm. Hmm. I have,
Sunetra says,
oh,
my
go ahead.
system used to work, then they discontinued it. And ooh, I hear you on that one. There was a fantastic app called Moves that would track stops. It tracked where you went through the day, didn't share it with anyone unless you told it to, but it just gave you a little record of where you were all through the day. And I used it to if I forgot to write down how long I met with the client, I could look back at it and see, oh, well, I was, at such and such a place for an hour and a half. I've got a record. And then Facebook bought it. And that was
Oh,
the end of that.
and they shut it down?
Yeah.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. So the caution there, I guess, is if you use a solution that involves
Third
some
parties.
third parties, somebody's app, somebody, particular platform, a particular device, be careful not to invest so much into it that you lose a lot if it goes belly up.
Right, that you can't adjust. Well, and I think, that habit of grabbing and writing is you have a thought, you immediately think you need to write something down, and before you lose it, I've been there 100 times, totally get it. And training yourself painfully, probably, like we talked about last week, that the woman, spent a month, readjusting her habit to something new. It can be done. You're going to have to work at it for a while. It's going to be a hassle to cut and paste those notes instead of recopying them all. You don't really want to do that. So cutting and pasting them into the notebook, or taking photos to put them into your note app on the phone or whatever, it's going to be a hassle, but it's a hassle that you need to face to help you shift, because that pain of capturing them into your system is going to be how you also retrain yourself to go to the system first instead of to the pieces of paper. And so practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
And make yourself go and capture them. If you keep avoiding your clipboard, then find out what it is about the clipboard that annoys you, or move it so that it's closer to you, or find out some other way to deal with it.
Okay. Gabriella says, my desk always looks a mess after I've worked at it. I put in 30-second timeouts in which I put things back in their places several times a day, except for papers I've been working on. These papers and random notes I find unpleasant to deal with, and I tend to procrastinate on it. This makes my desk look messy about 80% of the time.
So if the papers that you're working on are still in play, so you'll still be working on them more the next day, then having some active project files to store those papers at the end of the day is all you really need to do. You just have some project files, active files. You can put them all in one, you can separate them all out, but having a collection of files that are actively in motion, and so that you can put paper away related to those projects, is one thing to consider. For the papers that are no longer active work, you have to use some of those 30-second timeouts to either throw out the paper that's no longer needed, or put away one piece of paper. It doesn't get any smaller a lot than one piece of paper for 30 seconds of your attention. And you're comparing a messy desk that's bothering you versus doing something unpleasant for 30 seconds a few times a day. I understand that you're probably running up against, I have this piece of paper and I don't know where to put it. Like you're going to have to use that 30 seconds that you're allowing yourself to think, okay, this one piece of paper is related to this project. Do I have a place that the project stuff is parked? Do I really need to keep this piece of paper if the project's done? Like, you do have to think your way through beyond, I need to put this away. And if you don't know where, then you have to think through where it makes sense for it to go and create that parking space, and which is no different than, where do I put these shoes, right? You're just doing it with paper. So I imagine you're picking up a paper and thinking, I don't know where this goes. And then your 30 seconds are up and you're annoyed. And so you may have to spend some of those 30-second timeouts figuring out, for this specific piece of paper, what is the appropriate parking space, and maybe creating it and coming back to another piece of paper later. Like, if you can only do one piece of paper at a time, that at least gets some, something done, gets a few things put away. And you're probably going to find things in the pile that are really trash. So yeah, I totally get it. I totally do. But if you can, again, we talk about that habit. If you can get into the habit of spending those 30 seconds breaks that you use to actually address the paper, although it's painful in the moment, it's a shorter painful period. And then if your desk looks less messy, then you will also have some stress relief and some relaxation from the fact that your desk doesn't look terrible all the time. because clearly the way that you've written about it, it annoys you, it bothers you, you don't like looking at it. And so if you can give yourself the focus for 30 seconds or a minute to work on putting some things away, the desk will bother you less. So you'll be the direct result. You'll get the direct benefit of having spent your time that way because you'll be happier with your desk. So good luck with that. Go team, go.
All right. An anonymous respondent said, I don't have a daily routine that includes household maintenance, although I have begun creating some habits that will prevent clutter. The weak link concerning decluttering is interruptions by friends and neighbors who are lonely, demanding, sick, bored, senile, or any combination of the above. I dropped everything to be a friend rather than put them off.
Oh, so as airlines always advise you, you have to put on your own oxygen mask before you help someone else. I understand the desire to help and to be a friend to people that you feel like need it and can use it. But I think this is where you have to declare your time as valuable to you too. Maybe when they reach out, you make a time to call them back. I can't talk now, but I can talk to you at 2 p.m. I can talk to you in an hour. I can talk to you tomorrow. You have to protect your own schedule and your own needs. And it's okay to work them into your schedule instead of abandoning your schedule to their needs. If you agree and promise to call them in an hour or, 4 hours or the next day, and you put that into your schedule to make that happen, you are being that friend and you are giving your time to them. You're just doing it in a way that is supporting your schedule and what you also need to get done. And so I think it's important to recognize that while they have a bunch of free time, you may not, and you can still be a friend for them and just do it when it is effective for you to do it instead of disruptive for you to do it. And it's not an unreasonable thing to ask for what you need around that. And yes, I can give you an hour of my time, but I can't do that till this afternoon. I can't do that till tomorrow. I'll call you back and make that work for you instead. And it's nice that you're being, friends.
JB's comment on that is your new tool, the word no.
Not right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not right this minute.
Let me get back to you.
Mm.
Okay. Let's see. Another anonymous respondent said, I spend time on the internet first thing when I get up in the morning, checking email, reading or watching my favorite commentators, checking my favorite comic strips. I limit myself to 3 comics. This takes more time than I wish. 3 hours taken versus 1 hour I wish. Then I don't get started until 1 p.m. on tasks I need to do.
We were talking about that earlier, weren't we? Fun stuff's always easier to stick with than the dreaded to-do tasks. Is it a problem to start at 1 p.m.? Do you have an issue because you're starting at 1 p.m. or does it just feel like that's wrong to you? If you start at 1 p.m. and you get done what you need to get done, then who cares when you started? If it's later in the day, who cares? If starting at 1 p.m. means you can't get things completed, then that's a different discussion. Assume that you want to spend 3 hours during the day looking at all the things that you're interested in. You're going to make that assumption to start with because that's been your experience. And then start the day surfing for an hour and then stop and go do a task or two. Do the task, then you get to watch the internet for another portion of time. Do another task and you get some more time to look. So make the surfing a reward or break time event throughout the day. So you still get to watch what you want. You just do it in pieces during the day instead of all in one sitting at the front loaded at the front of the day. Also, you can listen to a commentator while you do a task, but play it while you work on something. So you can be trying to accomplish something like, I need to put the dishes in the dishwasher, but you can be listening to one of your commentators while you do it. See if you can combine the chore and listening to audio at the same time. And maybe that'll make it more palatable and you'll still get to experience some of the things you're wanting to watch. We've also asked our viewers and listeners what aspects of your home either contribute to or detract from your ability to cultivate and execute productive and useful routines. And so there's a few more responses about that from a positive standpoint.
Christina wrote, I live in a small space, so everything has to be pretty intentional. I've been in my place about 2 years now, so my routines and organization continue to improve. My partner is anti-clutter, which helps a lot with my natural tendency to have many things.
It's so great that your partner's anti-clutter. And so you have support in your efforts to keep things functioning. As long as the partner is respectful when removing clutter and checking with you about what's your stuff, then it sounds like it's a great team. And, it's always good if you have, if you tend to grab and you have someone else that's there to reflect back and go, no, 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 there's enough of that already here, or let's trade something out, or are you sure we want to add to the house with this? Then you sort of have a natural break. You have a natural stopgap, which is excellent.
Bridget says, very slowly, hubby takes more responsibility for his stuff. So that has a real advantage. Hubby empties the dishwasher and I only need to organize the Tupperware. Hubby empties the waste bin and the recycling bin and I do the cooking. The tasks are shared and we live happily ever after. And she included one of those hearts
A
for
heart smiley
eyes,
face.
smiley faces.
Oh, glad that he's stepping up, Brigitte. That's really wonderful. Tell him I said good for him. We're proud that he's participating. Slowly, whatever. If he's taking more responsibility for his stuff and he's supporting you in the chores of maintaining the house, then that's awesome. Yay, we're cheering for him.
Okay, we want to talk about some more responses that reflect factors that are tripping people up in their efforts. Becky says, my kitchen is very small and it is hard to keep it clutter free. I've gotten rid of so much, but there's still too much on the counter.
You may consider adding vertical storage then, like a couple of open shelves on the wall, or storing a few kitchen items that are used less frequently in cabinets in another room. I would look at the single largest thing that's taking up so much space on the counter and then ask yourself how you can replace that item's function or change it to a smaller versions of itself to save room. So maybe you have a microwave, but it's a huge microwave from a previous space, and you really need a smaller microwave to let it take up less space. Or whatever is out on the counter, whatever's got the biggest footprint, ask yourself, does the function that it's provide, can it be accomplished some other way? Is there some other appliance that will do the same thing? Is there something in the kitchen that's dual purpose so that you can subtract something that's on the counter? Just because it's always been up there doesn't mean it has to stay, and you can't rethink how you can get that functionality.
What is the appliance that you most often find taking up a lot of room relative to how often they use it? My guess would be a stand mixer.
That's one. And generally because it's tall, so it doesn't always fit in the cabinets. It's heavy. So putting it down under something or putting it overhead is really impossible because those things weigh so much. And so it really ends up living on the counter, even though somebody doesn't use it very often. That's an example of one that I would go park somewhere else. And whether that, in a cabinet in another room. So whether that's in a cabinet of a piece of furniture or whether that's in a cabinet that's, in a wall somewhere in another room, in a closet, whatever. That's an example of, if you're not pulling out the big mixer and using it every day or, several times a week, then it really doesn't need to be taking up counter space. They definitely are tall. And so it has to be a kitchen that has really extra tall doors and an open enough space that it can sit in. And because it's so heavy, it's always got to be at the front of the cabinet. It's not like you can push it back in the back of the cabinet to hide it. It's always got to be at the front of the cabinet because they're too heavy. It's super heavy to grab.
It's too heavy to put up high.
Stand mixer
at all. Would be dangerous to bring down from over your head.
Definitely. And having it be low and then pushing it in the back of a cabinet and then trying to get it back out again would be such a struggle. So they're not very conducive to storage in typical kitchen cabinets. It's just one of those things it's one of those adaptations that, like, they use that kind of product in commercial kitchens, and then everybody was like, oh, we should use this at home. It's like, yeah, except no kitchen's designed for a utensil like that, for an object like that. So if you have a real fancy kitchen, you might have one of those pull-up things that the mixer sits on and goes back in the cabinet, but then it takes out an entire cabinet.
Right.
just to store that thing. And so,
Did you ever have one of those sewing machine tables where you could, you lifted up the flaps and the sewing machine folded down to
yeah,
store?
disappeared.
They need to make flaps like that on kitchen counters for your stand mixer, where your stand mixer can just drop under the counter when it's
Disappear.
not in use.
Right. Yeah, exactly. How they've gotten around that is the cabinets open, the cabinet doors below open, this shelf comes out and up and locks into place and then goes back in again.
Oh man.
But it takes up a lot of space. It's truly.
Okay, I think we only have time for one more.
Okay.
Catherine says, my closet needs a serious overhaul. Well, two more. I'm going to pair two together here. Catherine says, my closet needs a serious overhaul. And Brenda says, I went from a one bedroom with a big walk-in closet to a 2-bedroom townhouse with 4 dinky closets.
Brenda, we've talked before about how important it is that closets function well. And if they're to support our launch into the day, they really need to work well. So being able to get into the closet and find what you want quickly and easily is the difference between starting the morning frazzled or starting it calmly. And dinky closets don't provide as much functionality as walk-in closets. However, if this is what you have to work with, then you have to adjust to those containers and aim to make them function well. This means being very careful about overstuffing them. I imagine you moved way more than will fit in these closets. And so it's time to decide what are the most important things to have in each of those dinky closets and then give away the rest. Your ability to use those closets easily will be defined by how much stuff is in them. So your house is setting a parameter for you and it's requiring a reduction in volume to make the closets function. You can add some capacity by creating storage outside the closets. For example, furniture that stores some clothing, hooks on the wall, adding under the bed storage for long-term items that aren't often used. But the adjustment from a wide open walk-in closet to 4 regular small closets requires some adjustment in content. The benefit from doing this will be make getting dressed in the morning easier and less of a struggle. And there's nothing more irritating than fighting to find a certain pair of pants in the morning, having to push along to look for the pants, like, and you're shoving things and it's too crowded and you can't see between. And so you're pushing. That fight is designed to make you aggravated. And who wants to start their day like that? So time to reassess the contents. And Catherine, a serious overhaul sounds like it'll require a bunch of hours. So attempting that cleanup all at once is a problem. You'll need to set some work times, a few hours at a time to start the process. Each work session, you can do another 2 feet of clothing rod or another overhead shelf or another section of the floor. Your closet will slowly improve. And once you've gotten all the way around, you can go back and rearrange things to better suit you getting ready in the morning. Each work session that you give to the closet will improve the situation too. You'll experience the benefits right away after each work session. So decide how long you can comfortably work in one sitting and then schedule a regular appointment with yourself to slowly reclaim the closet. And that effort will make a huge difference in how you start your day.
Okay, we are out of time. So let's talk briefly about next week. We're going to be back Tuesday, July 9th at the usual time, noon US Central. Our next topic comes from audience member Jean, who asked, is it time to let the Rolodex roll away? It's a great question, Jean. So next week, we're going to talk about categories of outdated stuff that it's probably okay to let go of. Don't have a title for that yet, but watch your email for an announcement. Gayle, why don't you give us the tittle?
Okay, this week's tittle, clear a roadblock. This week's assignment is to turn your attention and focus on the weakest part of your routine. If you haven't already done so while taking our last survey, answer the following question. What are the trouble spots in your regular routine? In other words, where do you find productive habits and routines breaking down on a regular basis? Make a list of the factors that contribute to or detract from your ability to carry out your routine, such as the condition of your home, the other members of your house, time limits or constraints, physical limitations like chronic pain or illness, etc. Identify your roadblock, the one factor that most interferes with the effectiveness of your daily or weekly routine. And then reflect on a change that you can make to remove or mitigate that roadblock. And consider these questions. What new habit might you cultivate? What task or responsibility could you consider removing from your routine altogether? What small change in your schedule or calendar could you make to smooth out the roadblock? What additional resources would help you make the changes you want? Whom could you enlist to help and support the change you'd like to make? And based on your answers to those questions, make a tentative plan to implement one change that might help you clear your roadblock. Then put it into action and live with the results for a few weeks and come back and tell us how it went.
Okay, if you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks everybody for coming. You know, we love that you're here with us, and we will look forward to talking to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.